Pope Francis, known throughout the world for his kindness and desire for peace, decided to make an unusual journey, a visit to one of the most vibrant metropolises in the United States, Los Angeles. This city, personifying the dreams and hopes of millions of people, was a place where both the greatest achievements and deep social problems grew. It was here, on the streets where the lights of skyscrapers sparkle and where life rages beneath them, that Pope Francis intended to meet with those who needed support and consolation. The morning dawned cool and clear. A light breeze penetrating the tall buildings made the air fresh and invigorating. Francis arrived in the city accompanied by a small retinue, but his attention was immediately drawn to one thing that did not escape his penetrating gaze. On one of the sidewalks, not far from a busy intersection, sat a middle-aged man, dressed in a shabby jacket and with dirty but sincere eyes. His face, weathered by many life's trials, radiated that modest pride that is so difficult to thicken with years of deprivation. "Good morning," Pope Francis said softly, coming closer, as if he sensed in this man not just a random passerby, but a soul in need of care. His voice was warm and calm, like the soft ringing of church bells. The man looked up and froze for a moment in surprise. The rare display of attention from such a respected figure filled his heart with a warm spark of hope. I didn't expect to be approached," the stranger stammered, trying to hide the emotions that had suddenly surged through him. His name was James, and as it turned out, his life had been filled with loss and disappointment. James, once a hard-working laborer, had lost his job and his home when life had put him to his most severe trials. But even in that hour of despair, an unquenchable spark of dignity had gleamed in his eyes. Francis sat down next to him, not asking the man for words or explanations. Instead, he let silence fill the space between them, where every movement, every glance became signs of invisible support. At that moment, the crowd on the sidewalk began to rustle. Random passers-by, hurrying about their business, stopped for a moment, watching an unusual spectacle, the majestic figure of the Pope, surrounded by an aura of calm and wisdom, conversing with an ordinary man left on the sidelines of life. "Tell me, James, how long have you been on the streets of this city?" Francis asked, his voice both gentle and full of concern, as if he were trying to penetrate the very soul of a man suffering from homelessness and loneliness. The answer was long and heartfelt. James spoke of how his life had been turned upside down, how the loss of his home had become a symbol of the loss of all hope, and how each new day seemed like a struggle for survival in this vast and indifferent world. Listening to James's story, Francis couldn't help but recall the words he had once spoken. Every soul deserves love and understanding. He understood that it was not so much a matter of material assistance as of the possibility of restoring a person's faith in himself, of letting him understand that there may be a light of hope hidden around every corner, if only it were not drowned out by the noise of everyday vanity and the prejudices of others. The crowd around him began to gather tighter. People who witnessed the meeting wondered if this was another publicity stunt. But for Francis, there was no room for pretense or political games. He knew that behind every face there was a story, and every story deserved sincere attention. Even if a person seemed to have nothing to give, his inner strength and dignity were priceless. As the sun rose higher, its rays played across the Pope's face, as if to remind him that each new day holds the potential for change. Francis extended his hand toward James, not so much as a sign of mercy, but as a symbol that even in the most difficult circumstances, there is always support to be found. His gaze was full of promise and quiet determination. "I am here to help you believe in life again." At that moment, a voice from the crowd rang out, and one of the passers-by, a young man with tattoos and a rebellious air, exclaimed that all this was just another attempt at manipulation for public effect. But Francis, unperturbed, continued the conversation, only smiled, as if he knew that true strength lies in being true to one's principles and helping without expecting praise or recognition. Over the next few minutes, a quiet but powerful dialogue unfolded between them. With each word the Pope uttered a small step toward healing, each confession James made an opening to the soul. The conversation moved seamlessly from stories of loss to tales of the past, filled with memories of family, friends, and lost dreams. Francis listened intently, allowing James to express the depth of his emotions without interrupting or judging, as if each word were a prayer that could heal the wounds of time. Thus began an unusual encounter, in which destinies and fateful moments intertwined, promising change. This first chapter was not just a story of two people meeting, but also a reminder to all present that even in the darkest corners of life, there is always room for light and love. As the crowd gradually began to disperse, leaving behind a light echo of the meeting, James's heart warmed. He felt that perhaps behind this meeting there was a chance for a new life, a chance that would be given to him by the Pope, a symbol of hope and love for millions of people. The general feeling of sincerity and care that emanated from the Pope filled the air with a special atmosphere, where every minute seemed like an opportunity to start all over again. His words, imbued with the quiet power of faith, promised that help would come even when you least expected it. This moment became the beginning of a long journey, where the boundaries between worlds were erased and humanity conquered the indifference of modern society. James, clutching a simple but significant manuscript of fate in his hands, did not know that his life was about to acquire a new meaning, a meaning that would be followed not only by material changes, but also by a deep inner transformation that could change not only him, but also the hearts of everyone who would witness this meeting. After that fateful encounter on the sidewalk of Los Angeles, as the first rays of a new day lit up the faces of passers-by, life began to take on new colors. Pope Francis, driven by a deep faith in the possibility of change, decided that his mission did not end with a comforting conversation. His heart was full of determination not only to listen to James, but to do everything to give him a chance at a new life. At that moment, amid the bustle of the city, there was a special atmosphere in the air. Every detail seemed to matter, every meeting, a purpose. Francis, in Los Angeles, understood that American culture, with its drive for success and endless opportunities, offered not only material but also spiritual change. He believed that every person, regardless of their circumstances, deserved respect and a second chance. Deciding that words of encouragement should turn into concrete actions, the Pope organized the first meeting with local community leaders who cared about the fate of those who had fallen by the wayside. Among them were representatives of charities, volunteers, and even local entrepreneurs ready to help those who had lost faith in themselves. That same day, a small but diverse community gathered in one of the small halls rented for the meeting. There were not only people who had experience working with the homeless, but also those who were looking for new ways to implement their ideas for improving the urban environment. The atmosphere was filled with the expectation of change. The Pope, standing on an improvised stage, looked at the crowd, and his face was lit up with a gentle smile, as if foreshadowing a bright future for each of those present. "My friends," he began, his voice quiet but confident, "we are not here today to talk about losses and disappointments, but to seek together ways to restore faith in human dignity. Our world is too fast and sometimes merciless, but we can be the ones who bring light to the darkest corners of this city. Each of us knows how hard it is when you are left alone, when it seems that hope is slipping away. But it is at this moment that we need to remember that inside each person there is a spark that can ignite the flame of change." Francis's words resonated with the hearts of those present. Among the listeners was James himself, who, despite his awkwardness and shyness, sat in the back of the room, his eyes searching for support and faith. His life, full of losses and deprivations, now suddenly seemed to have new meaning. Listening to the warm words of the Pope, he felt his soul gradually filling with new energy. People in the audience approached each other, exchanged glances, and conversations that had previously been filled with skepticism gradually turned into discussions of sincere hopes. The address was followed by a question-and-answer session. Volunteers and representatives of charitable organizations talked about their programs, shared examples of successful stories, when help provided in time became a turning point in people's lives. The conversations lasted for hours, and each story became a brick in the huge foundation of a new initiative. Francis listened to everyone with genuine interest, asking questions, clarifying details, always sincerely believing in the possibility of a better future for each person. The atmosphere in the room was one of openness and trust. People shared their stories, told of times when they themselves had to face despair and hopelessness. It was clear that every word spoken here penetrated deep into the heart, forcing everyone to remember that even in the most difficult circumstances, a path to healing and renewal can always be found. James, gathering all his humble will, stood up and quietly began to tell about his life. How he once lost his job and home, how the circumstances brought him to his knees, and how his soul, despite all the trials, was still searching for at least the slightest glimmer of hope. Listeners, listening attentively to his story, felt an invisible connection being established between them, uniting them in their desire for change. Discussions at the tables in the hall gradually turned into deep personal conversations, where everyone shared their fears and dreams, trying to find comfort in communication with others. This atmosphere of mutual help became the first step in creating a community where everyone could count on support and attention, no matter how difficult their life trials were. As Pope Francis watched, his faith in humanity grew stronger with each passing moment. He knew that even if change did not happen overnight, the evening would be the starting point for many good deeds, heartfelt conversations, and collaborative projects. For an American audience accustomed to quick fixes and immediate results, the event seemed like a quiet revolution, a slow but sure movement toward reclaiming lost human values, respect, and hope for a better future. One of the entrepreneurs present at the meeting shared his ideas on how to create a support network for people in difficult life situations. He talked about how each of us can contribute to the common cause, even if it seems like a small thing. His words, filled with enthusiasm and faith in the power of community, inspired many listeners. He offered not just material assistance, but also training, professional retraining, and the opportunity for creative self-expression, so that each person could find their place in this large and diverse world. At this point, James, feeling that his story was resonating with those around him, began to think about the future, about how he could rebuild his life. The Pope approached him again, looked him straight in the eye, and quietly said, "Everyone has the right to a second life, to start over. And I believe that your journey has not ended here." These words, simple and profound, filled James with new meaning. He realized that he was not alone, that around every corner he could meet someone ready to lend a helping hand. As the evening wore on and the room filled with a sense of deep unity, Francis organized a round table where participants could exchange ideas and outline concrete steps to implement their plans. Every new thought, every sincere emotion became a pledge of future achievements. At this point, even skeptics began to open up, asking questions about how words could be turned into deeds, how help could be made to be more than just empty promises. The light of the lamps, softly illuminating the faces of those gathered, created an atmosphere of coziness and warmth. It seemed that time slowed down, allowing everyone to feel the importance of what was happening. The smell of coffee and quiet conversations hung in the air, reminding us that simple human encounters conceal enormous power. This meeting became a symbol of the fact that even in a metropolis, where vanity and chaos often suppress true values, one can find a place for spiritual awakening and mutual support. And so the evening went on, and each participant felt that a new chance had been born, a chance that could change not only their lives but the future of an entire community. James, drawing on the words of the Pope, realized that his life could take a new direction. He had already begun to dream of how he could regain his identity, how he could return to who he once was, and how he could perhaps even help others in a similar situation. The Pope, with the wisdom of many years of service, knew that real change begins small, with one step taken with faith and love. He saw how every word spoken today became a seed that would one day grow into a mighty tree, bringing shade and comfort to those who need it. It was in this sincerity, in this desire to unite hearts, that the power to overcome any obstacle lay. When the meeting came to an end, the participants, saying goodbye to each other, exchanged contacts, plans, and promises to meet again. James, leaving the hall, looked back and with gratitude in his eyes met Francis's gaze, as if silently promising that his life would never be the same. Every step, every minute of this evening became a reminder that change is possible when a person is not afraid to open his heart and accept help, even if it comes at the most unexpected moment. This evening was not just a meeting of people who found themselves at a crossroads of fate, but the first act of a great change that promised to embrace the entire city and perhaps the entire country. And although there were still many difficulties to overcome, the faith that Pope Francis instilled in the hearts of people became the beacon that illuminated the path to a new life full of hope, support, and mutual assistance. In the days following Pope Francis's inspiring meeting in the hall, Los Angeles entered a period of intense preparation and organization for a multitude of projects to support those on the margins of life. The air was filled with change, and even skeptical city dwellers began to realize that change was possible through action rather than words. Francis, with his unfailing humanity and wisdom, became a magnet for people seeking support and a new perspective on the future. The morning after the meeting, the Pope decided to visit one of the local homeless support centers, where volunteers and specialists had already begun working, inspired by the ideas voiced at that evening meeting. The center, located in an old building that once served as a local shelter, was now being transformed under the sign of a new era, an era when helping was not only an obligation, but also a calling for everyone who could support their neighbor. Francis, dressed in a simple shirt and jacket, personified the unofficial messenger of goodness, and his appearance at the center caused a real sensation among the staff and guests. At the threshold of the building, he was met by Mary, a vibrant and sincere middle-aged woman who had dedicated her life to working with vulnerable groups. Her eyes shone with joy and determination when she recognized who it was. "Your Holiness, we have been waiting for you for so long," she said with a warm smile, extending her hand. Francis responded with a calm, confident touch, as if confirming that change was at hand. "I have not come here simply to speak of hope, but to find with you ways to renew and restore human dignity," he said, and his words echoed throughout the room, filling the hearts of those present with faith in a better future. For several hours, the center hosted meetings and consultations where experts, social workers, and local government officials discussed specific steps to improve the lives of people in difficult life situations. The idea of creating a permanent space where everyone could receive not only temporary shelter, but also a chance for professional training and further integration into society, resonated with all those present. The Pope listened attentively to proposals, asked questions, and offered his own ideas, which came from the depth of his faith in man. His speech was imbued not only with theological reasoning, but also with a practical understanding of the problems of modern society. One of the proposed projects was to organize workshops and trainings for the homeless, where they could learn new professions and regain their self-confidence. Francis noted that everyone needs a second chance, and that even in the most difficult circumstances, a path to recovery can be found. His words, spoken with such sincerity, were a powerful impetus for the discussion. Everyone present felt that now was the time to stop blaming fate and start acting together. At the same time, rumors began to circulate in the city that one of the major local entrepreneurs, Mr. Johnson, was ready to make a significant contribution to the development of social programs. This news caused a storm of discussion among residents, and many began to perceive it as a sign that change was indeed possible. Francis personally met with Mr. Johnson in a small cafe on the corner, where they had a long conversation about how business can be a tool for improving people's lives if it is aimed at creative goals. Mr. Johnson, touched by the sincerity and wisdom of the Pope, promised to consider the possibility of creating a support fund for the poor. At that moment, an understanding arose between them that even the business world, which seemed so far removed from spiritual values, can become an ally in the struggle for human dignity. There were emotional moments, too. At one of the meetings, held in a local park, with the spring sun shining on the faces of those gathered, a young man named Alex, who had previously lost his job and home, gave a speech full of gratitude and hope. His voice trembled with emotion as he recounted how one day, while passing a church, he heard words that changed his life forever. "I no longer felt like a nobody," he said, "until I saw that the world could be kind. Today I am here to start a new life." His words, filled with sincerity and determination, brought thunderous applause and tears of joy from those present. It is moments like these, when personal stories merge with a common desire for renewal, that have become the cornerstone of a movement for change. Francis worked tirelessly to ensure that each initiative received the attention and support it deserved. He personally spoke to those who did not believe in a better future, inspiring them to seek new opportunities. One such story was about a young mother named Lisa, who, faced with the harsh realities of life, lost everything, from her home to her faith in her own strength. The Pope met with her in a small room at the center, where, against the backdrop of soft music and the flickering light of a table lamp, he listened attentively to her story. His gaze, full of compassion and understanding, seemed to say, "I see you, and I believe that you can overcome any difficulties." These words became the first ray of light for Lisa, which allowed her to believe in the possibility of change and begin a new stage in her life. At the same time, new connections between representatives of different social strata began to be established in the city. Thanks to the efforts of the Pope and his associates, a new platform for sharing experiences and support appeared in Los Angeles, the Path of Renewal. This initiative united representatives of local government, business, social services, and ordinary citizens who wanted to change their lives for the better. Regular meetings, discussions, and joint projects became a symbol of the fact that even in a huge metropolis, where life often seems chaotic and disorderly, you can find a place for real mutual assistance and support. Francis saw this movement as not only concrete steps to improve the material side of life, but also a profound transformation of souls. He said that a real breakthrough is possible only when each person begins to see in another not just a neighbor, but a potential friend, ready to share both joys and sorrows. His words about love, faith, and the possibility of change found a response even among those who had previously been skeptical. Each new story, each personal victory became proof that change is possible if there is a common will and sincere concern behind it. Among all the events of this busy week, the Pope especially valued the moments of quiet communication, when he could look into the eyes of another person and feel their pain, joy, and desire for a new life. These moments confirmed his conviction. Even in the biggest city, full of noisy streets and glittering shop windows, human warmth and mutual assistance can become a real support. And, watching how the lives of people around him gradually changed, Francis felt that his mission on earth has a deep meaning, to give hope and faith that everyone deserves a second chance. In the evening, as the city began to quiet under the cover of night, and the lights of skyscrapers were reflected in the calm waters of a nearby lake, all the participants of the Path of Renewal initiative gathered together to celebrate the first successes. That evening, to the sounds of quiet music and laughter, people shared their plans and dreams, exchanging ideas and a sense that the future is just around the corner. The Pope, sitting among new friends, smiled and listened to stories of personal victories, sincerely rejoicing for everyone who was able to find the strength to rise after a fall. This meeting became a symbol of the fact that change begins with small steps, with a simple gesture of support, with a sincere word of consolation, and with the willingness to share one's fate with others. Francis understood that there was still much work ahead, many obstacles and doubts, but he believed that even the darkest path can be illuminated by the light of hope if at least one spark is lit in it. It was this spark that became the beginning of a new stage for those who dared to believe in the best. So, under cover of night, when the city was once again filled with the quiet magic of change, everyone present felt that they were not just participants in some project, but creators of a new reality in which everyone has the right to love, support, and a chance to start all over again. And although there were still many days of hard work ahead, every smile, every word of support became proof that change is possible when there is faith in the heart and a desire to make the world a better place in the eyes. At dawn on the fourth day, when the first rays of sunlight began to penetrate the dense morning haze of the metropolis, Los Angeles found a new breath. The city seemed to be awakening, along with the hope that was pulsating ever stronger in the hearts of its inhabitants. After the exciting meetings and initial successes of the Road to Renewal initiative, organized by Pope Francis, the moment had arrived when dreams and expectations were put to the first test. At this point, all participants in the project realized that the road to change is rarely straight, and even sincere intentions can collide with the harsh realities of everyday life. At the center of the action was a new program aimed at integrating those previously marginalized into the city's workforce. Following a recent meeting at a charity center where participants discussed plans for professional retraining and the creation of workshops, a pilot version of the New Life project was launched. Conceived as a way to give people a chance to start over, the initiative attracted the attention of not only local residents but also business representatives willing to contribute to the social transformation of the city. The program included courses on training in new professions, psychological support, and a mentoring system that was supposed to help participants adapt to new conditions and gain confidence in their abilities. Pope Francis, personally participating in the launch of the project, visited one of the training sites, where classes were already underway in a small but cozy room. The atmosphere was filled with anticipation of change, but also with slight anxiety. Everyone understood that a long and thorny path lay ahead. Francis, dressed in his usual simple clothes, confidently walked between the rows of tables, where people, as if for the first time in a long time, smiled and shared their dreams. His gaze, imbued with wisdom and deep compassion, was able to instill faith even in the most insecure. "My friends," he began with a quiet but decisive intonation, addressing the assembled participants of the program. "Today you are taking the first, but very important step towards a new life. I know that each of you has a difficult history behind you, filled with losses and disappointments. But today I see here a strength that can overcome any obstacles. Your desire for change is a light that can illuminate not only your path, but also the path for others. Let me be your guide, and together we can create a world where every person has a chance at a new life, where opportunities grow, and faith in yourself becomes a stronghold against all adversity." These words, filled with a quiet but powerful conviction, resonated in the hearts of everyone who attended the class. The participants listened with bated breath, feeling something forgotten awakening within them, that inner strength that allows one to rise up after the most difficult trials. Among the listeners, a middle-aged man named Garrett stood out, who until recently had been living on the streets, constantly experiencing despair and fear for the future. His past was filled with events that he did not want to remember, and right now, listening to Francis' words, he felt that perhaps his life could change. In the hall where the classes were held, time seemed to stretch. During the discussions and practical exercises, the participants shared their experiences, asked questions, sincerely hoping that each new idea would become a step towards restoring lost confidence. The Pope listened attentively to everyone, asking clarifying questions, not allowing anyone to remain on the sidelines. His approach was simple, but at the same time incredibly effective. He knew how to find words of support even in the most difficult situations, making people believe that each of them has a hidden strength capable of overcoming any difficulties. However, not all expectations were met immediately. The first problems arose during the implementation of the new life program. Some participants encountered bureaucratic obstacles and a lack of resources, and some of the local employers attracted by the initiative were not ready to fully integrate people with a difficult past into their teams. These difficulties became a test not only for the project organizers, but also for the Pope himself, who understood that the path to change is rarely smooth. One day, when the atmosphere of disappointment reigned on the training ground, Francis gathered all the participants for a frank conversation. "My dears," he said, his voice soft but firm, "change does not happen overnight, and our path may be strewn with obstacles. But it is in overcoming these difficulties that we find true strength. Today, when we face challenges, it is important to remember, every failure is a lesson, every mistake is an opportunity to learn and become stronger. We will not give up as long as this flame of hope burns within us, as long as each of you believes that you can change your destiny. Together, we will overcome any challenge, and let our difficulties become a catalyst for future victories." The words echoed throughout the room. The participants' eyes, filled with doubt and anxiety, began to slowly fill with determination. Garrett, standing in the shadows of the room, felt his heart flutter with new hope. He realized that his past, full of pain and loss, did not determine his future, and that together with the other participants in the program, he could take a step toward a better tomorrow. Over the next few weeks, the Pope and his team faced many challenges. Funding issues, resistance from some local authorities, and even skepticism from residents became constant companions on their journey. But each time hope seemed to be fading, Francis found the strength to inspire and support the people. He organized additional meetings, held personal conversations with those who needed reassurance, and sincerely believed that change was possible if only we did not lose faith in ourselves. One evening, when the city was enveloped in a warm twilight, the Pope met with a group of young volunteers who were enthusiastically working to renovate a local community center. Among them was a girl named Emily, whose life story was full of drama. She lost her home and family in a tragic accident, but despite all the difficulties, she managed to maintain faith in a better future. Emily shared her doubts and fears with Francis, but also spoke about her dreams to create a place where people who have faced adversity in life could find support and understanding. The Pope, having listened carefully to her, put his hand on the girl's shoulder and said, "Your pain is the seed from which a miracle can grow. May your flame of hope never go out, because it will become a guiding star for those who are still looking for their path." These moments of sincere communication became a clear signal for all the participants of the program. Despite all the trials, faith in the best does not fade, but only grows stronger in the most difficult circumstances. Each new day brought with it new tasks and challenges, but also new victories and steps forward. The New Life Project became a symbol of the fact that, even when faced with obstacles, people can unite and find the strength for change. Under the leadership of Pope Francis, all the participants of the program began to realize that change requires not only effort, but also patience, and that every obstacle is an opportunity to take a step towards a new future. At the same time, against the backdrop of the city bustle, other events were unfolding, showing how changes affect not only the lives of individuals, but also the entire community. Local media began to pay attention to the New Life initiative, emphasizing that even in a metropolis where there is a bustle and ambiguous moods, it is possible to create a space for mutual assistance and support. Publications, full of human warmth and sincerity, touched the hearts of residents, and more people became ready to join this movement. Each new participant who came to the community center brought with them a piece of hope, which, when combined, created an invisible bridge between the past and the future. Thus, during this intense period, under the sensitive guidance of Francis, the project participants not only overcame the difficulties that arose, but also made plans for the future. They dreamed that one day their success would become an example for other cities and even for the entire country. Young volunteers, experienced mentors, and people who managed to find the strength to rise after a fall became living proof that change is possible if there is a sincere belief in the best behind it. The Pope, observing each new step and each new achievement, felt that his mission was becoming increasingly global in scale, and his words were becoming more powerful in uniting people's hearts. That evening, as the last rays of the sun were disappearing behind the horizon, those gathered at the entrance to the renovated community center exchanged hopes and plans. Their voices rang with promises for the future, and their eyes showed determination not to give up in the face of difficulties. This night was not just the final chord of another day, but also a symbol of the fact that every new dawn brings with it a chance for change, a chance to start life anew. Francis, standing surrounded by people, smiled sincerely and understood that their path was just beginning, and many more trials lay ahead of them, but they would overcome them together, hand in hand, with faith in a bright future. At dawn on the fifth day, as the city was waking from its night's sleep, the first rays of the sun were shining in Los Angeles, promising change and a new dawn. The New Life project, initiated by Pope Francis, reached its climax as everyone involved, from those who had once lost hope to local businesses and government officials, came together to celebrate the successes achieved and to chart the future. The day was a symbolic end to one stage of life and a starting point for new beginnings, where the changes overcome together became a solid foundation for building a better society. In the central square of the city, under tall buildings reflecting the sun's rays, a grand event unfolded, dedicated to the results of the work done. The atmosphere was permeated with a feeling of deep gratitude and unity. Here, in the open air, people shared their success stories, told how it was the words and actions of the Pope that inspired them to fight for a new life. The crowd listened to every word with bated breath, because a new world was opening up before them, where faith, support, and mutual assistance became the driving force of change. Francis, standing on a small dais, looked out over the assembled crowd with a sincere smile and quiet confidence. His voice, filled with quiet wisdom, began to speak about how the path to change is never easy, but it is through overcoming trials that true heroes are born. "Dear friends," he said, "we have come a long way, where each difficulty has become a stepping stone to a new future. Today, we do not simply celebrate achievements, we proclaim changes that will live in our hearts and actions, bringing light even to the darkest corners of our city." These words resonated with those present. People recalled their personal stories, how lost dreams turned into new beginnings, how despair gave way to hope and the desire for renewal. In the center of the event, there was a large screen on which videos with stories of the project participants were shown. One by one, the faces of people for whom New Life became a symbol of a second chance appeared on the screen. Garrett, who had previously been described as a person who had experienced many losses, spoke about how for the first time in a long time he felt self-confidence and faith in a better future. His story, imbued with sincere emotions, made the listeners hold their breath, and many of them found a reflection of their own experiences in his words. On stage, where the speeches continued, the young entrepreneur Mr. Johnson shared how his investments and support for the project became the starting point for the creation of a nonprofit foundation aimed at supporting small businesses and social initiatives. "We are part of this city," he said, "and our strength lies in unity. Change begins with each of us, with our desire to be useful, with our willingness to help those who find themselves in difficult situations. Today, I want our initiative to become an example for everyone, so that every city, every community believes that goodness can change lives." On this day, a symbolic ceremony was also held, during which each participant received a small token, a keychain with a flame, symbolizing an unquenchable spark of hope. These keychains became a reminder that even in the most difficult moments of life, when it seems that the light has already gone out, inside each person lives a flame that can light the way to a new life. Each such token, presented by the Pope, became a small promise that change is possible if only you do not give up and move forward, no matter what. Francis, after the ceremony, approached a group of people, among whom were Lisa, a young mother who had endured many difficulties, and Emily, a volunteer whose story was filled with the bitterness of loss, but also with fortitude. He embraced them, and his look said more than 1,000 words. Your path is a path to light, and I am sure that new horizons are opening up for each of you. At that moment, under the applause and smiles of those gathered, everyone felt that the changes were not accidental. They were the result of joint efforts, sincere faith, and selfless help. As the ceremony continued, the crowd broke into small groups to discuss plans for the future. People talked about how they could not only maintain the results achieved, but also expand the initiative to other areas of the city, and then to the entire region. At every step, there was a sense of confidence that real transformation of society begins with small deeds, with kindness, with attention to each person, with a willingness to listen and support. The participants of the event discussed the importance of creating such spaces where one can not only receive material assistance, but also find spiritual support, feel that you are not alone in this world. During the evening, the organizers held roundtables where they discussed the further development of the New Life project, attracting new partners, volunteers, and investors. Each participant shared their ideas, and gradually a common plan was formed that promised to make the city a place where changes would become the norm, not the exception. The Pope, taking part in these discussions, emphasized that the key to success is unity, understanding, and respect for each person. His words about the ability of goodness and love to change the world sounded like a mantra, uniting all those present in one common desire for creation. Hours passed, and the sky gradually darkened, giving way to the stars, and the city lights lit up one by one, like symbols of hope in the night. Under the starry canopy, the participants of the event parted, but each left with the feeling that today they had witnessed something great, a ritual of transformation that would forever change their lives and the lives of those around them. Each person, having found new meaning and new goals, understood that their personal transformation was not only their success, but also a contribution to the common cause, to the creation of a society where every life is valued. As the last participant left the square and silence fell over the city, Pope Francis stood for a moment, admiring the view of the glowing metropolis. His heart was full of gratitude for having brought together such different people, giving them faith in the future and showing them that every obstacle is only a temporary test that can temper the spirit and lead to real victory. He said quietly, "Today we have taken a step towards making the world a brighter place. May our actions inspire not only us, but also future generations, so that they never forget that goodness begins with each of us." Thus, one of the most inspiring stages of Los Angeles life has come to an end, a stage in which people, united in faith and love, proved that change is possible. The story that began with a simple meeting on the street turned into a movement capable of changing destinies and giving everyone a chance at a new life. This story, filled with trials, difficulties, the joy of victories, and sincere care, became a vivid testimony to the fact that even in the largest and noisiest metropolis, it is possible to create space for true human values. Pope Francis and his companions continued to work, knowing that there were still many challenges and tasks ahead, but no longer afraid of them, because they had found the strength of unity and support. Each new dawn became a symbol of the fact that life is an eternal movement forward, and that even the most insurmountable obstacles can be overcome if faith and love for one's neighbor live in the heart. This was not the end, but only a new stage in the endless cycle of changes that began with a spark lit in each person and turned into a flame capable of illuminating the entire world. A few months after the monumental event in the central square of Los Angeles, where a new dawn was ushered in for hundreds of people, the world around them began to transform. In the heart of the city, where once there had been bustle and indifference, there was now an atmosphere of hope, unity, and genuine care for one another. In this quiet but transformative space, people began to build their new lives based on the lessons learned during the New Life initiative. Pope Francis, who visited the city during a period of active transformation, did not leave Los Angeles immediately after the ceremonies. He stayed for some time to see for himself that the initiatives laid down in his words and actions were reflected in the hearts and deeds of the city's residents. His presence became a symbol of a constant reminder that change begins with everyone who dares to believe in the best and take the first step. He often walked the streets where new community centers were being built, where master classes, trainings, and meetings were held, uniting a wide variety of people, from volunteers to representatives of local businesses and ordinary citizens. In a small but cozy cafe, where a meeting with the project participants once took place, one could hear conversations about how the lives of those who were previously doomed to loneliness and despair had changed. James, whose fate became the starting point for many success stories, now worked in a small workshop where he taught others crafts. His story about how he found the strength to believe in a new life inspired more than one generation. Garrett, who once barely believed in the possibility of change, became an active participant in the local community, helping those who faced difficulties on the road to recovery. Lisa, a young mother who once lost everything, became the organizer of a small support group where women shared their experiences and found strength for new beginnings. Emily, a volunteer with a difficult fate, opened a center for creative development where people could not only learn new professions, but also express their souls through art, music, and painting. These people, once desperate and lost, became the personification of the fact that even the deepest wounds can heal if there is warmth, support, and faith in a bright future nearby. The public initiatives that began with the Pope's participation soon turned into a sustainable movement uniting people from different parts of the city. Local authorities, business representatives, and social workers understood that change required not only organized events, but also constant attention to the problems of society. Thanks to the creation of a new platform for the exchange of experience, called the Path of Renewal, many new support programs appeared, aimed at restoring human dignity, improving skills, and integrating people into public life. After some time, new graffiti and murals began to appear on the streets of Los Angeles, telling about the power of unity, about how faith and support can overcome even the most difficult trials. These works of art became a kind of monument to those who did not give up and continued to fight for their new lives. In every corner of the city, you could see symbols of hope, small lights, reminding that in the darkest times there is always a place for light. And so, as another quiet evening arrived, the city seemed to pause for a moment to remember past trials and celebrate new achievements. People gathered in parks, on embankments, and in small cozy cafes, discussing plans for the future, sharing dreams, and making plans for their families and communities. These conversations, filled with faith in the best and aspiration for change, reflected the profound transformation that had taken place in the soul of each resident. Pope Francis, who was already preparing to return to the Vatican, took one last look at the city that had inspired him so much. His words, spoken with such deep feeling, continued to live in the hearts of people. He left behind not only the memory of meetings, but also a living example of how even one person, driven by love and faith, can light the flame of change in the coldest world. The epilogue of this story is not the end, but only a reflection of the eternal cycle of life, where each ending becomes the beginning of a new path. The path that people walk, transformed by the spirit of unity and mutual assistance, finding the strength to move on, despite all the difficulties. Los Angeles has become a place where change has become a reality, where every street, every house, and every heart tells that good always wins if we are ready to lend a helping hand. And so life goes on, with new encounters, new stories, and new hopes. And the echo of those days when people built their new reality together will live forever, reminding us all that change begins with a spark lit in each of us.